It's the end of the year, or it was a few weeks ago. I'm a little bit late for this. All the coaster enthusiasts are putting out their top coasters list, and being a coaster enthusiast, it is required that I must do so. Let's jump right in. Kicking off the list is the world's longest wooden coaster, the Beast at Kings Island. While the layout is not close to intense for the most part, the amazing setting, laterals, and mild roughness turn this into a super fun experience. Most of the ride is snaking through the woods with unbanked turns and mild drops. Of course, you can't forget the strange tilted drop that leads into a tunnel and the super intense final helix. I rode this twice in the front row, once in the middle of the day and once during the sunset, which was one of the most fun experiences I've ever had on a coaster. Next up is another underrated gem of a coaster, this being Gemini at Cedar Point. Built 1 year prior to the Beast, this features a layout reminiscent of a classic wooden coaster with big drops and turnarounds. The restraints are very minimal, and the steel track on the wooden supports provides a very smooth ride experience considering the coaster's age. The drops off of the turnarounds feature some decent whip in the back of the train, and every single airtime moment delivers solid floater airtime. The drop in the middle of the ride also delivers a frightening near-miss effect, best experienced in the back row of the blue side. Finishing off the ride is a really strange helix, where the track work feels completely messed up, and it's just a fun way to end the ride. Valraven at Cedar Point is easily one of the most fun roller coasters I've ridden. The ride experience is smooth and graceful, with also some great stomach-dropping moments. Many people complain about the vest restraints, but I don't mind them that much, likely due to the fact that I haven't ridden any of the dive coasters with classic over-the-shoulder restraints, and I've not experienced the great airtime that those are said to offer. Valraven features an impressive 214-foot drop before an Immelman and a turn to the mid-course, but the ride is more interesting in the second half, with the dive loop and hang-time-filled zero-G roll ending with a floater airtime hill. When I first got off of Banshee at Kings Island, I immediately made comparisons to its vest restraint counterparts at Cedar Point, Valraven and Gatekeeper. This ride keeps the graceful inversions from those two, but the elements are executed in a much more forceful manner. The ride features no pre-drop, so back row riders are yanked right down the drop, a jarring way to start the experience. The train pulls up from the forceful valley and into a graceful dive loop before the picturesque loop around the lift hill. Several more forceful inversions and valleys are traversed before a slow inline twist that might be my favorite inversion on any coaster. Banshee's Ohio counterpart is a much older version of the model, opening 20 years earlier as Raptor at Cedar Point. The feel of this ride is so much different from Banshee, replacing the drawn-out elements with tighter maneuvers, namely on the zero-G roll, cobra roll, and the corkscrews. The first drop of Raptor is superior to Banshee's, featuring some surprising floater airtime for riders seated in the back right area of the train, which can be enhanced if you have room in your restraint. The layout features much more character than Banshee's, with the intense zero-G roll, jarring transitions on the cobra roll, extremely whippy corkscrews, and the insane double helix at the end is the knockout blow in the duel between Raptor and Banshee. The debut of the Mach Ride's extreme spinning coaster model has impressed even the most seasoned coaster enthusiasts, with its wild first drop and several standout elements. Time Traveler knocks your socks off with one of the best starts to a coaster, yanking back row riders down sideways for a powerful moment of intense ejector airtime and a frightening amount of butterflies in the stomach. It is hard to prepare for this drop, as all you can do is hold on tight and let the ride do its thing. Unfortunately, Time Traveler gives you way too much time to recover from the drop as you meander your way back up to the launch track and sit there for a few seconds before slowly accelerating back to a reasonable speed. The rest of the layout has a few standout elements, the S-Hill and bunny hop into the final launch delivering ejector airtime, the inversions with some disorienting hang time, and even the two overbanked turns providing hang time in unusual directions. While the elements themselves mostly deliver, there is simply too much time between the elements that this seems to feel like somewhat of a family coaster at certain parts of the ride. What is regarded as America's best GCI wooden coaster lies in the shadows of multiple massive steel thrill monsters. But don't let that fool you, because this ride is easily more intense than any of them. Mystic Timbers at Kings Island never lets up until the final brakes, as the moment you detach from the lift hill, this ride never lets its foot off the gas. You'll be seated in very comfortable trains with a minimal lap bar, and the track work is immaculate, so there is no hint of roughness. If you're sitting in the back, you'll get a great dose of laterals in that twisted first drop before you get airtime in and out of that first turnaround, before diving back down into the woods. From there, you're just being thrown in every direction, airtime and laterals coming at you over and over and over again, while you're just flying through the trees before suddenly you're sitting on the brakes trying to catch your breath. The airtime wasn't strong, but it didn't need to be, as the intense pacing and very rapid changes of force made this ride stand out. There's also something about the theme and the overall feel of this ride that I just love so much, and I can't wait to ride this again. Not gonna lie, this ride still scares me. I don't even have to be riding it. Just looking up at Top Thrill Dragster's massive top hat from the midway gives me the chills. In terms of intensity and thrills, this ride is in a complete league of its own compared to anything else I've experienced. The train just has a tiny T-bar restraint, which makes the ride all the more frightening. Once you're out on the launch track, the anticipation stretches out your sense of time, as you're sitting on the launch track for an eternity. As the launch starts, you are pinned to the back of your seat as the coaster accelerates to the speed of light. This is the only moment on any coaster I have to hold on for dear life. The train shoots up the top hat and provides an amazing view, mostly of Millennium Force's layout right in front of you, before you dive down and complete a 270-degree spiral down this intense 400-foot drop. The valley gives some great positive forces before the train hits the final brakes. So while this ride packs in more quality thrills than any other coaster I've ridden, the extremely short length is a massive limitation, so I can only place it this high. Here is a ride that I used to rank much lower, but after a back row sunset ride, I changed my mind about Magnum XL200. First off, the view from this coaster is almost as good as the view from Millennium Force, and with the awesome chain lift sound accompanying your trek to 205 feet, it is a great way to start the ride. The first drop is much better than I remembered in the back, giving some great floater airtime. The strange track profiling on the descent of the first hill after the drop will have you laughing your way into the strong floater airtime hill. The turnaround may seem mild, but the flawed track work gives it a classic feel. The return run is filled with sharp airtime hills where the strength of the negative G-forces increases with every hill until you are treated to 3 back-to-back very strong ejector airtime hills that deliver one of the best finales on any coaster. Up next is the first and only B&M Hyper I've ridden, Diamondback at Kings Island. While the smoothness of the track is questionable, the fun layout and super comfortable restraints make up for it easily. Riding in the back row, you get yanked all the way down the 215-foot first drop for some great airtime and the best possible way to start the ride. Following this are 2 camelback hills that for back row riders provide a somewhat similar, yet much less intense sensation to what you feel on the first drop. A forceful turnaround leads into another amazing floater airtime hill before a turn into the mid-course. The train makes its way back to the station with some less intense floater airtime hills, but it's all made up for the dive into the splashdown, providing one last strong floater airtime moment before back row riders get their arms drenched by the water jets. Kings Island's other B&M monster is Orion, Ohio's second Giga Coaster, which opened in 2020. This coaster has a somewhat similar feel to Diamondback, but with a couple changes. The first drop is even better, with that amazing floater airtime sustained all the way down the 300-foot drop. The first 2 elements are weak in terms of intensity, but the sense of speed is outstanding. The turnaround is followed by a speed hill with sustained airtime that is such a strong form of floater, I might even bump it into the category of ejector because it was 90 degrees out and Orion was hauling. The floater airtime hill delivers similarly to the ones on Diamondback, but the helix was actually fairly intense. The forces were not extremely strong, but they were so sustained that they might create a gray out for some people. The off-axis hill is by far the strongest moment of the ride when experienced in the back row, far right seat. The train turns upwards before yanking you downwards before you hop back into the final brakes. The coaster does lack a quantity of elements, but the quality easily makes up for it. Ohio's original Giga Coaster features a much different style than Orion, with less of a focus on individual elements and more about the flow between each element, emphasizing the speed as much as possible. Millennium Force's first drop is amazing, providing endless ejector airtime for back row riders as it feels like you are diving into the lake. The first overbank is very forceful, often inducing a mild gray out due to the G-forces. The middle of this layout features a few overbank turns and airtime hills throughout Millennium Island, which is an area that makes it feel like you're not even in the park anymore due to the dense areas of trees. A strong airtime hill leads out of the island and back towards the station for an even stronger airtime moment as you fly by guests waiting in line for the ride. The layout is so long, and it's one of the few coasters that provides a long enough ride time. Silver Dollar City's best coaster is Outlaw Run, the RMC topper track that opened in 2013. The ride kicks off with an outstanding first drop that dives into the woods before an almost perfect layout packed with unique maneuvers. The track work is not perfectly smooth, but it does elevate the feel of a wooden coaster. Every element on this ride is powerful, either delivering great upside down hang time or producing strong ejector airtime. The layout is a bit short, but the experience delivered by this ride is more than satisfactory. Perhaps the most well-rounded coaster I've ridden is Maverick at Cedar Point, delivering strong forces in every direction from ejector airtime, positives, laterals, and even some acceleration force with the second launch. Some people complain about the restraints, but this year they did not affect the ride experience at all. I actually found them to be somewhat comfortable as I got to enjoy all the forces that the ride had to offer. This layout is just a constant blitz of intensity, throwing you in every direction with strong ejector airtime, whippy laterals, and strong positives whenever possible. The most common number one among roller coaster enthusiasts is, no surprise, Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. The layout provides an otherworldly amount of quality ride time, filled with strong ejector airtime and fun inversions. The first half contains the spectacular first drop, followed by the top hat and outer bank, which are two of the most sustained airtime moments on any coaster, and they're also pretty strong. The large elements continue with the two inversions and hop into the mid-course brake run, and there are also a bunch of airtime moments thrown in between the elements. The second half kicks up the intensity with a non-stop blitz of ejector airtime as you're just flying through the support structure of previous elements. The layout gets more and more intense until you slam into the brakes, ending your experience on, in my opinion, the world's most perfect roller coaster. Hope you enjoyed this one, and stay tuned for more content here on Elite Coasters.